we're going to look at 3 additional ways to organize the body of a persuasive presentation. In part 1 of this series, we looked at the classic problem solution benefits design. This is part 2 in a 4-part series. Today, we're going to look at 3 alternative ways to structure your main points. They are very similar to problem solution benefits points, as you'll see, but they have slight variations that will give you flexibility. The idea is you would need to select the best approach to fit your particular message and the specific audience you're speaking with. I'll give you recommendations, but you ultimately have to use your best judgment to make that choice. I also encourage you to look at the free resources and classes and group coaching options on my website. I'll put links to the Communication Coach Academy in the description below this video. The first approach is really the foundation to all persuasive messages, and that is the basic problem solution main points. Just 2 main points. All persuasive messages that I have seen have both problem and solution buckets at their foundation. Now, the most obvious difference between the problem solution and problem solution benefits points that we talked about in the first video in this series is that we're leaving off the benefits here. For example, I might be talking to some of the decision makers in my company, and I'm explaining a problem. They're having a lot of trouble getting new hires up to speed on how our workflow functions. My recommended solution would be to get the entire team together to revise and map out how projects move through the organization. As this example shows, there may be a lot of good reasons not to dedicate an entire point about the benefits. In this case, one reason to leave off the benefits point is that my listeners may be extremely familiar with the issue and not need the benefits spelled out for them like that. A related reason to leave off the benefits point is when there's an extremely tight fit between the problem you've introduced and your solution. When you have that type of message, your solution should cancel out most or all of the problems that you've already introduced in a really obvious way. My solution accomplishes this. If we get the entire team together and revise and map out how projects flow through the organization, then it might sound redundant if I explain how that solution would create benefits. That might be a little like saying, the problem is I'm hungry, the solution is I'm going to eat some food, and the benefits are I won't be hungry anymore. If that benefits point is really obvious for any reason, you may opt to just go from problem to solution and then go to your conclusion. But leaving off the benefits point is not the only difference during an actual speech. My example about the company's workflow is short, but when you're using the problem solution points only, you'll often see speakers enhance or develop their problem point with 2, 3, or even 4 clear problem subpoints that are identified under that overall problem point. When drafting a full-length presentation on a topic, it's almost as if these speakers treat the problem point as its own self-contained speech about the problem. This is usually where a speaker will hit the problem really hard and clearly to build an extremely strong case that there really is a problem with multiple identifiable issues, and then they'll recommend their solution. And in the same way, they may do that with their solution. They may develop their solution point in an equally clear and detailed way with subpoints, almost as if it's a standalone mini speech about their proposed plan. And that makes sense because if your speech has only an introduction, conclusion, and 2 points in the body, then you must make sure those 2 body points are fully developed. The second variation is to use the problem cause solution main points. You can obviously still see that we're grounding this in the problem solution thinking, but here we're back to using 3 buckets by explaining the causes of that problem. This is essentially adding another layer to our discussion of the problem by explaining the drivers of that problem at a deeper, more detailed level. Sometimes that will make your speech better. For example, I may be doing a presentation and the problem I explain is that the growth at our company has been close to flat for the past 18 months. Next, I would explain that the cause of the flat growth is due to the fact that all of our existing store locations are maintaining their profitability, but we have reached capacity at those locations. And as a result, we cannot count on continued growth from our existing locations. They're already maxed out. My recommended solution then is to open additional store locations so we can continue to grow the company overall. I've frequently seen the problem cause solution design used when we're talking to supervisors or leaders or decision makers who are 2 or more levels above us in an organization. If that's the case, you may need an additional point that explains the causes of the problem because those causes may not be obvious to those stakeholders, who are not fully aware of those underlying issues. You may also want to talk about the causes of the problem so the specific solution you're about to recommend comes across as a good fit for the problem you've explained. For example, adding new store locations is a much more costly proposal for growth when compared to increasing sales at existing locations. But when I explain in my point about the causes that our existing locations are already at full capacity, then adding new store locations becomes a solution that is seen as a tighter fit between the actual problem we have and the solution we're recommending. That's why I sometimes recommend adding a point about the causes. It may help you create a tighter logical flow between and among your main points, and it'll tell a more coherent story. The third alternative is to organize your main points around the symptom, causes, and treatments. You'll usually see this in healthcare-related fields. This is a little specific and may not apply to your professional setting, but it's still worth learning about because it'll show you just how common persuasive messages are across industries, even though they might be using different terms. It may also help you add some nuances to the way you explain things to clients, to your team, or to supervisors. In healthcare conversations, articles, presentations, you'll hear symptoms, causes, treatments all day long. Let's look at an example, and I'll show you that this is really just a repackaged persuasive message. For example, you go to the doctor to discuss some symptoms that sound like diabetes, increased thirst, more frequent trips to the bathroom, fatigue, blurred vision, unexplained weight loss, and numbness or tingling in the hands and the feet. Some of the causes are insulin resistance, autoimmune disease, hormone imbalances, pancreatic damage, and genetic mutations. The treatments would be monitoring your blood sugar, oral medication, insulin, diet, and exercise. Google almost any medical condition and you'll see the results explained using the symptoms, causes, and treatments as a schema. This may sound fancy or technical, but let me show you how this is really just a variation on a persuasive message design that we've already seen. Talking about symptoms is really just another way to talk about the problems that you're experiencing as a patient. The next point is about causes. That point is the same. You're talking about the causes of whatever problem you're having. And the treatment is really just another word for recommended solution. That treatment is meant to solve or at least manage your medical issue. And it makes a lot of sense that healthcare professionals would use these main points. They're often trying to persuade their patients to adopt a particular course of treatment. So naturally, they organize their ideas in a persuasive way. It's likely already obvious by now, but let's line it all up and look at all these approaches together, and you'll see a clear pattern emerging among them. At the foundation, they all include problem and solution points. Sometimes you want to expand upon the causes of the problem. Other times, you may want to spell out the benefits in a really clear way, the way we did in the previous video. And the symptoms, causes, treatments approach is mostly about using different words with very similar meanings. The reason they all talk about the problem first is to create the motivation to adopt the solution. If you just jumped to the solution and never explained the problem, it wouldn't be a very persuasive message. Those are 3 alternative ways to organize a persuasive speech. Feel free to tell me about your preferred approach and your particular message for your specific audience that you see yourself speaking to. And as mentioned, this is part 2 in a 4-part series about how to write a persuasive speech. In part 3, we'll be looking at how to appeal to listeners' hearts and minds by filling those main points or buckets with the right balance of supporting materials. In the meantime, feel free to take a look at my website and all the free resources there, the group coaching options. It's called the Communication Coach Academy. Links to all of that are in the description below. Until next time, thanks, God bless, and I will see you soon.